There's a neighborhood in San Bernardino County that's getting taken over by a 2 million square foot warehouse. Apparently nowadays it is easier for millennials to buy a home than it was for boomers to buy their first home. And it costs how much to remodel your bathroom in New York? In today's episode, let's dive into some of the top real estate industry headlines from the last couple weeks. So LA is cracking down on hostels that have been popping up out there. I didn't even know there were hostels in LA. Let's check the story out. So I'm sure most of you guys know this, but a hostel is a form of low-cost, short-term, shareable lodging where guests can rent a bed, usually a bunk bed, in a room that sleeps a bunch of people. Think about it like staying in a really cheap hotel, except instead of getting your own room, you have to share a room with a bunch of people, plus you have to share a bathroom and a kitchen with a bunch of people as well. This is a pretty legit option for people who are traveling and looking for a cheap place to stay. Although they're much more popular in Europe, you don't really hear about too many hostels around the United States. I guess they're happening primarily in low density neighborhoods, more on that in a second. And this lodging, like we were just saying, is associated typically with backpackers in Europe, but it's being linked with crime in Southern California. I guess the hostels are flat out illegal in low density neighborhoods. They are allowed in higher density neighborhoods like Koreatown though. These owners are charging people about $25 a night to sleep in here. And not a surprise when you're renting out beds for $25 per night. The neighborhoods where this is happening, the hostels are bringing crime, drug use, noise, and unsafe streets. Apparently there's about 28 of these things that are scattered around LA, but the city's taking it pretty seriously, probably because the owners of homes in these surrounding neighborhoods are complaining and their voices are getting heard, which is a good thing. They've created an enforcement task force who's going to be targeting this mid-city area. And what's surprising to me is that this is saying that a lot of developers are actually buying lots or buying duplexes and then cramming a bunch of beds into them and converting these units into these hostels. As a developer myself, I do not see this being a good plan. Like, I would not want to spend who knows how much money, $500,000 on a duplex in LA, then convert it into a hostel that sleeps like 10 or 15 people or something, knowing that that's an illegal hostel that I'm operating. Like, yeah, maybe you can make a 20% return on your money if you do this, but how are you gonna sleep at night knowing that basically any day the city can just completely shut your operation down? And just to give you guys an idea, look at this. We're not talking about like some old hotel that's being converted into a hostel. Like, this is one of the addresses from that article that we were just looking at that recently got shut down. So apparently this one is not a hostel anymore, but look at this. It's just a house sitting right in the middle of a regular neighborhood. So yeah, imagine you live in one of these other surrounding houses and this house is just catering to a bunch of short-term tenants who can pay $25 a night to stay there. I'd be pretty pissed too if I was one of these neighbors. For our next story, Housing Wire is saying that it's easier for millennials to buy their first home than it was for boomers to buy their first home. This seems a bit hard to believe considering that interest rates nowadays are still in the 7 to 8% range as of the filming of this video, and prices of homes haven't come down all that much lately either. All I'm saying is that every millennial that I know is having a pretty hard time thinking about buying their first house. They're basically all waiting on the sidelines until either interest rates or prices come down. Here's the article though. So they start by telling us that the debt to income ratio for millennials turning 30 is lower than the ratio was for boomers who were also turning 30 back in their day. The boomer age range today is between 60 and 78, which means that this group of people were buying houses in the 80s. Interest rates were over 16%. We think interest rates are high now. They were over 16% when boomers were buying their houses in the 80s. For millennials who are turning 30, the mortgage payment that they're gonna take on is about 22.5% of their median income, but compare that to boomers who needed to pay an average of 33.2% of their average household income when they bought their first house. On a more personal note, I'm a millennial. I bought my first house when I was 25. Thinking about people who are looking to buy their first house today though, I just figured I'd get a little personal and tell my story because I, for one, am very passionate about owning the home that you live in. So here it is, guys. This is my first house. This is pretty funny to look at, but it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, nothing crazy. It was only 1,200 square feet. I did what's called a house hack with this place. So what I did was I lived in 1 bedroom. I rented out the other bedrooms. So while I lived here, my roommates almost paid for my entire mortgage. So I got to live here basically mortgage free. I bought the place in 2011 when I was 25. I sold it in like 2016 when I was 30. So I lived here for 5 years, and the coolest part about this whole experience is when I sold this house after I lived in it for just 5 years, I walked away with a $130,000 tax-free profit. What I love about that is I just lived here for 5 years. Like, I could have very easily rented an apartment for 5 years, but instead I scrambled together the cash. I bought this place and I made it work. I put myself in a position where, yeah, I was maybe a little overextended in the beginning because I spent my entire life savings of like $8,000 on my FHA down payment and my closing costs. Chances are, if you buy in the right location for the right price and the right street and all that, if you just live in this house for a couple of years, you're probably gonna walk away with a pretty nice payday when you're ready to sell and move on to the next house. Okay, next up we have a neighborhood in San Bernardino County that is being obliterated to make way for a 2 million square foot warehouse. There has been a bit of an industrial real estate boom over the last decade or so. It just seems like we can't get enough big warehouses and manufacturing facilities and data centers and stuff like that. But usually these facilities are built on the outskirts of town. They're not being built in areas where there's already a bunch of houses. That's where this article comes in, and I gotta hand it to them. They start strong. Look at this. Who's going to live here? What happens when an e-commerce warehouse takes out your neighborhood? There's a lot going on in this article because they're kind of hitting on a few different stories, but the gist of what's happening is we've got developers who are converting the 10 freeway and the adjacent communities into like a logistics corridor. This all, I guess, is legit though. A couple years back, they voted on this and the county supervisors voted 4-0 to approve this whole business park. It seems like the gist of why they approved it is because, for one, they need these types of fulfillment centers and warehouses in the area. For two, it is going to bring a lot of jobs to the area. And for three, the developer agreed to pay a massive amount of money to a nearby school district, $44.5 million if they got approval to do this. The big question that a lot of these locals are asking now is, what's the community going to look like, or is there even going to be a community once this warehouse is basically sitting right in the middle of what used to be the community? Here's a picture of what it looks like, I guess, as of recently. So neighborhoods are getting just completely wiped out, but there are still houses surrounding the neighborhoods. You can see this is going to be a little awkward for the people who live around this. But hey, I guess the only positive here is that some people are cashing out. Like, there's this lady, Carolina Rios, who looked at this as an opportunity. She paid $225,000 for her Bloomington home and lived there about 13 years. So she paid $225,000 13 years ago. Well, in 2016, she sold her house to these developers for $1.4 million. I'm gonna guess that's probably a lot more than her house would have otherwise been worth if those developers didn't come in. Not a bad situation, at least from that standpoint. So all I hope is that the developers are taking care of everyone that way and that everyone's at least able to walk away with some financial gain here. Okay, let's move on to a little bit more of a lighter topic. There's a millennial out in New York City who just remodeled her bathroom. She spent $13,000 on it and she's got 4 major regrets. Now, I will say this, you guys, I have remodeled a ton of bathrooms in my lifetime, like probably literally 60 or 70. And I'm not exactly sure how you can spend $13,000 remodeling your bathroom. Like, there's not too much to it. You've got a toilet, a bathtub, some wall tile, a vanity, a mirror, a faucet, a light fixture. Like, there's really not a whole lot. I spend on average $7,000 or $8,000 remodeling bathrooms around here. She does live in New York though. Something tells me that's a pretty big factor. I mean, just imagine remodeling a bathroom when your entire crew needs to travel up 20 floors in an elevator just to get to your unit. Anyway, she has 4 regrets. Let's check them out. She says the first regret is that the built-in shower niche looks good, but it's not practical. In the text down here, she basically says that this niche is not enough to hold all of her essentials. As a guy, I don't get that at all. Like, I've got 1 bottle in my shower, which is my shampoo, my conditioner, and my body wash, like all at once. So this is about what my shower would look like. 1 bottle and I'm good. Her second regret is not adding storage above the toilet was a missed opportunity. I wouldn't consider that a regret. There's still time. You can buy a cabinet and just put it here, then you'll have storage. Next regret, she says the single glass shower panel is beautiful but impractical. So notice this, she's got this shower panel here, does look very nice. She says that it's a sleek look, but it's inconvenient because it gets a bunch of water spots and soap scum. I'm gonna tell you this, she needs to invest in a squeegee because all you need to do is squeegee this thing off after every shower and you're good. So I wouldn't consider that a big complaint either. Our last regret is that a deeper tub would have been a better investment. I get that. I can't really argue with that. And you don't really think about this in the beginning. I wouldn't think about this at all because I don't take baths. So personally, I wouldn't care. I probably would have actually just built a shower here with no tub in it at all. So she learned her lesson on this one. Valid point. I'm sure she'll get a deeper tub on the next one. That's a wrap for today's video, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button down below before you go if you enjoyed today's episode. I'll see you guys next time.